Hello everyone, and thank you for the introduction. I'm going to do this in English as unfortunately I don't speak Thai, but I will be speaking slowly, so hopefully easily understandable. So, as my introduction already said, I'm going to focus during the presentation on regulations related to eco-design and specifically the PPWR in Europe. I will also give some snapshot on EPR regulations in the US more briefly. Before we go to that, I want to introduce first shortly Avery Dennison and our sustainability strategy and goals, very high level. So Avery Dennison is a company that has been here since 1935. Our origins are in Ray Stanton Avery, who is our founder and also the inventor of the world's first pressure-sensitive label. Since then, we have grown into a global leading company, Fortune 500 corporation. We have a global footprint with more than 35,000 colleagues around the world, and we are headquartered in the United States. We have two business groups. I will not go into the details, but summarizing, our materials group focuses on pressure-sensitive materials, so really our legacy, the legacy of our founder. And then we have the solutions group, who is more focused on RFID solutions, also data management and identification solutions. Our vision, as you can see and read on the slide, is that together we connect the physical and the digital world, and we do this to solve some of the world's most pressing challenges. I now would like to play a short video on how we are making possible to solve these complex challenges. It's very short. Yes, in this slide we can click the video and play the video.
What if scanning your clothes could tell you their story? Or your sneakers could confirm their authenticity? What if your sushi could assure you of its freshness? Or you could track ingredients from farm to fork? What if your football shirt made you more than just a fan? Or your morning coffee lets you tip the farmer directly? What if your car could reflect your style, as well as the sun from your face? What if your windows could save energy? And all of this got the thumbs up from the biggest voices on climate? What if a label could alert you when food is going bad, assure you a vaccine is safe, and stop clothing from going to landfill, and enable plastic to be recycled instead of becoming ocean waste? What if? What if we told you one company can help make all of this possible?
Yes. So you can see here the 4 challenges we help to solve, and it's very clear how 2 of these challenges are really closely linked to sustainability, and specifically reducing waste and advancing sustainability, circularity, and transparency. So when looking at sustainability, circularity, and transparency, this is really also where we will focus on in the rest of the presentation. But it's really about how we innovate to make packaging more intelligent, more sustainable, and also reduce the impact of packaging. And we do this throughout the life cycle of the packaging, making circularity possible, enabling circularity, and actually collaborating with our whole value chain and whole ecosystem to make this happen. Because of course, as you all know, these are really complex challenges. We cannot solve them alone. That's also why we have associations like TIPMSE and others where we really work together. So we can now go to slide 13, where I will explain a bit more how sustainability is closely, next slide please, next. How sustainability is closely interconnected and actually integrated in our strategy. As you saw, it's really also at the core of our vision what we do, and it is built around really a broad sustainability scope. So of course today we are going to focus on circularity, but our sustainability strategy also encompasses our own operations, how we make these operations more sustainable. Think, for example, about reducing and recycling waste, but also water management, and also actually the way we interact with the local communities we operate in. So we have a whole area where with the Avery Dennison Foundation, we give grants to NGOs around the world, and we really collaborate on the ground in the communities where we operate and where we have production sites. So here you have a bit of an overview how we came to our strategy, because of course we are not doing this again alone, but we are doing this with multiple stakeholders. I've mentioned some in the center circle of the slide. And actually the way we define the strategy is very much linked to the sustainability trends. Think, for example, about globalization, but also trends that are broader than just sustainability, as for example digitalization and also consumer behavior, because if you think of how newer generations consume and also just how they think, this is really going to impact the way we do business. Newer generations, luckily so I would say, are much more sustainable in their way of life and think about sustainability more, and this is reflected in the way they consume. So all of these impact drivers and trends feed into our strategy, and then the way we address it, it's through our solutions. And on the right side of the slide, you see some of the solutions. So of course, looking and focusing on circularity, which is today's topic, one of the main areas is of course innovation, how we innovate our materials and solutions to make them more sustainable, to drive really circularity. And how do we do this within the ecosystem? So we really want not only to have, as Avery Dennison, circular solutions, but also to enable the circularity of our value chain and our whole ecosystem. Think, for example, our solutions that enable the circularity of the whole packaging. Then we can look at our sustainability goals. I won't go into detail here, but again, you can see how they are clustered around three main areas. So the first area, focus for today, is the circular economy. The second one is more linked to our environmental impact, and this both in our operations, but also in the value chain. For example, if we take GHG emissions, of course, we reduce emissions related to our operations and the energy we purchase, our scope 1 and 2 emissions, but we also are working on reducing our overall value chain emissions, specifically scope 3 emissions, working, for example, with our suppliers very closely. Here are some highlights of our sustainability journey, and one thing I want to mention is that, as you can see also on our ESG website, while we work still on achieving our 2025 goals, which of course are very close, we also have a set of 2030 goals, which are even more ambitious than the 2025 goals, where we have roadmaps from now to 2030 to get there. And again, also here we can see how really we work with our whole ecosystem, all stakeholders, and we really want to have a positive impact and create value, of course, for our customers, for our end users, but the broader ecosystem communities we collaborate with. Good. Now we come to really the focus of this presentation, and specifically packaging regulations. As I said, I will start with European regulations, and specifically the PPWR. PPWR stands for Packaging and Packaging Waste Regulation. So it's a regulation from the European Commission. It's part of a broader package of regulations the European Commission issued, which is called Green Deal, and it's really focused on the vision the European Commission has of making Europe the first carbon neutral continent by 2050. And so this regulation focuses specifically on the packaging industry. There are some key areas of focus within the PPWR, and you see them listed on this slide. At least these are the main relevant really for our industry. So starting from the top, we have regulation concerning the substances in packaging, which really are aimed at limiting and rather banning the use of PFAS above certain limits, with a timeline of mid-2026. And specifically, PFAS will be prohibited in food contact labels and packaging above certain thresholds. Coming to recyclability and to EPR, here we must look at design for recycling guidelines, and I will go a bit more in detail in the next slides, but here is already a snapshot. So the way the European Commission framed the regulation is with increasing levels of ambitions, because by 2030, actually grades A, B, and C of recyclability will be allowed, so with grade C being banned by 2030, and in 2038 we will go progressively to a higher level of ambition, and the regulation is even more strict, because then also class C packaging will be banned, so only grades A and B will still be allowed. And these recyclability grades, I will explain them further later, but I already want to point out that they impact all elements of the packaging unit. So it's not only about the main container, but also the lids, the adhesives, and label. Then looking at the EPR scheme, so basically the EPR fees are closely interlinked to the recyclability, because as I will explain a bit later in the presentation, of course, you will notice the more recyclable the packaging is, the lower the EPR fees will be. And this is of course based on the eco-modulation principle that we heard already from previous presenters today. Another area in the PPWR is linked to recycled content, and it's really aimed at raising the amount of recycled content in packaging. This really applies to the whole packaging, and in most of the cases the label will be exempt, as typically a label is less than 5% of the packaging. But still at Avery Dennison we have pressure sensitive label solutions with recycled content. Still we want to lead in the industry and align and even be faster than regulation, so we are offering solutions there. And then the last area is really focused on compostable packaging and specifically on compostable labels for fruits and vegetables. So this will be the only labels allowed from 2027 onwards, because sticky labels for fruits and vegetables will be not allowed anymore after 2027. Before we go more in the details of the recyclability classes and also EPR fees, I wanted to also point out why we are talking about PPWR here. We are, of course, in Thailand, in Asia. Why is the PPWR relevant for you? So actually, PPWR is, of course, a European regulation, but its scope extends further than just the European market. And this is for a few reasons. First of all, we see also from previous experiences and regulations that there is a trend where European regulations actually influence regulations in our other parts of the world. But also on a second reason is that EU regulations impact other regions like APEC through trade relations. So, for example, if you look at APEC-based companies who wish to import within the EU, they will need to comply with the PPWR requirements in terms of recyclability, recycled content, and will also need to pay EPR fees. So, if you wish as a APEC-based company to import in the EU, you will also need to appoint in each EU country a representative where you will pay also the fees. This is an important element about the fees I wanted also to mention. So they are regulated, or at least the overall level of ambition, and I will tell more about the timings, is set by the European Commission. So it's homogeneous within the whole European Commission, but then it's up to each country within Europe to set their own threshold EPR fees levels. So this is something that will still need to happen, because in terms of timeline, the overall EU level of ambition will be set by 2028, and then the countries will have until 2030 the time to have their national guidelines. Yeah, someone is noise. Good, we had some background noise, which is fixed in the meantime. So the timing, as I said, is 2028 and then 2030 for the national EPR schemes. We can now look at how companies can demonstrate compliance with the PPWR requirements. And you can see the different actors, whether it's manufacturers, importers, or distributors, have different obligations. But mainly the obligations are linked to three types of documents and activities that need to happen. So the first one, it's something that really needs to happen at the manufacturer level. Well, the manufacturer will have internal production controls to actually ensure that the way they manufacture the packaging is compliant with the PPWR obligations. Then there is a EU Declaration of Conformity, which is really something issued by the EU authorities, where there is the need to demonstrate the fulfillment of the PPWR requirements, and this is really a document that attests that compliance. And then the last one is more of the technical documentation, where there is really a step-by-step assessment of the packaging conformity, and also an analysis of the risks in case of non-conformity. As importers, so for example, APEC-based businesses that wish to import into Europe, they don't need to actually produce or work on these assessments themselves, but they have to make sure that they get a conformity assessment and all the needed technical documentation from the packaging manufacturer, as upon importing they will need to demonstrate and to show these documents. Now we can go a bit more in detail on the design for recycling guidelines for brands and on the eco-modulation of EPR fees. So design for recycling guidelines, as I said, will be published in terms of overall ambitions by the EU Commission by 1st of January 2028. And then the EPR fees will be regulated at national level. All of these national level EPR fees will be, of course, eco-modulated, so the criteria will remain the same. And you can see that within Europe they work with 4 classes of packaging, and of course the classes of packaging are related to the recyclability. So we go from class A, which is the most recyclable packaging, to class D, which is the least recyclable. And class D packaging will be banned already as of 2030, whereas class C packaging will be banned as of 2038, leaving us with only class A and B allowed packaging as of 2038. The assessment of the recyclability is done per unit of packaging, and again this design for recycling guidelines are on one side, of course, developed by industry bodies. For example, the one that in Europe is really the influential body is Recyclas, and we are part of Recyclas. We work very closely with them in developing and shaping this design for recycling guidelines. And the way this works is that then this industry body developed DFRs will be adopted by the European Standardization Organization, which you see at the bottom right of the slide. It's called CEN. And also there we are active in the various work streams as national experts. And of course, when looking at the EPR fees that each of the European countries will set up, they will be, of course, closely linked to these various classes of recyclability, and you will have lower fees for Class A packaging, and then progressively higher fees as you progress towards lower level of recyclability until Class D. We can now look at very quickly and high level to the legislation in the US, which is not fundamentally different in the sense that also in the US we see that regulations follow the same principles. So also there is an incentivization of recyclability, design for recycling guidelines, and linked EPR fees. As you can see, of course, in the US, what is different is that there is not really, like the European Commission, a body that is issuing a regulation for the whole United States of America, but it's rather scattered on a state level. And you can see on the map there are some states which have already passed an EPR regulation, and some where there are discussions, but the approval is still pending. As often in the area of sustainability, we see that California is leading the way with their rules coming into force on January 1st of 2025. Also there, they work like within Europe with the producer responsibility organization that has been appointed by the states to then have their EPR state legislation. The impact for brand owners and generally for the industry, again in the US, is similar to what we see in Europe, because really the center of these regulations is that there is a need to register with state EPR programs and to really focus on the way packaging is designed. The idea is really to have a look at packaging from the start of its design and to look at types, weights, quantities of packaging materials, and since it's on these individual elements that the companies need to report and need to have third-party audits. And of course, again, also in the US, the more recyclable each element of the packaging is and the overall packaging is, the lower the fees. As I said, of course, regulation will come into force as of 20... Can we go still to the slide before? As of 2025, 1st of January, and importers should proactively prepare, of course, by improving the way packaging is designed, by looking at how the data is tracked, and also already prepare for budgeting for the fees, as the fees are still being set by the states. This was it for regulation. Now before handing over to my colleague Kejin, who will talk specifically for Asian, I wanted also to give a snapshot of how at Avery Dennison we enable the circularity of packaging through our solutions and what our research has been showing. So again, we can go further to the slide 27. Yeah, next. Yes. So, as I said, of course, when talking about sustainability and circularity, we look at trends and how really the whole ecosystem is evolving. And our research and also interviews with the industry, with brand owners and various companies, we see how new technologies combined with ecosystem changes and really higher ability of the recycling processes will impact the way packaging is designed and also bring us to higher levels of packaging circularity, and how this will really need to happen through cross-value chain collaboration and really ecosystem partnerships. So our pressure-sensitive label solutions really focus not only on introducing recycled content in our own labels, but really in enabling the recyclability of the overall packaging. Of course, next to being versatile and having high efficiency. And an important factor is that, as I was mentioning before, we work with organizations like Recyclas in Europe and EPR in the United States to really make sure that solutions are certified as enabling the recyclability of the packaging. And while also for you a bit of a snapshot on the trends in terms of these certifications, while in the past we would see that in APEC there was a tendency to work closely with APR rather than Recyclas. Lately we see that Recyclas is coming up as a more influential body also in APEC, so really these are two important organization to keep an eye on also for this region. And lastly, I'm coming back to the initial messaging to close the loop on how really we believe we can do this and we can really improve the way packaging is eco-designed, but by working with the whole value chain. So of course, as Avery Dennison, we don't work only on our solutions, but we really partner with our suppliers, whether it's paper and film supply or film suppliers. We partner with converters and our end users. And we also work closely with recyclers to really understand what are the recyclers' pain points, how we can help them, how we can collaborate with them. And the same also for the end users, like Avery Dennison, also our converters, our end users have sustainability goals. They want to work more sustainably, to have circular solutions, and it's key really for us to understand their challenges, how we can help them, and really set up partnerships. And we do this as well in associations and organizations you see on the sides of the slides, whether it's regional organizations like Recyclas or Ceflex. Ceflex, if you are not familiar with them, it's an association focused really on flexible packaging. But also we work with global organizations, like for example, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation. You will know it's really the global leading organization when we talk about circularity, but also the World Business Council on Sustainable Development, where we work really on circularity, but also on climate. And for example, it's within this latter organization that we are working on a voluntary global circularity protocol, where we work with various industries throughout the value chain to really look, okay, how can we raise the level of ambition in terms of circularity and eco-design of packaging. Thank you, and I will now hand over to my colleague Kei Jin to talk us through some of our solutions in Asian and really circularity in the Asian region.
Thanks Claudia, and good morning everyone. My name is Katsing and I'm based out in Singapore, so I will also speak in English. Thanks Claudia for actually sharing all the regulations coming out from EU and North America. So I'm actually looking after more on the ASEAN market, so that's why I think after understanding all the regulations that we are looking at internationally, I mean, we will zoom back into this market, and it's also very important for us to understand what is going on locally and to design EPR and and guidelines that are suitable for the local market. And that's why I think Avery Dennison, we also do a lot of investment to understand and partner with local ecosystem partners like associations like TMC. We also do work with other associations like iPro in Indonesia, MOIT in Vietnam as well. So so this is actually some of the efforts that we put in place to work with ecosystem partners. And let me also, before I go into some of the details on some solutions we recommend for design for recycling guidelines, I do want to also specify and give a little bit of context when we say what PSL is, because I think there are so many decorations technologies out there, and would like to actually point out when we say pressure sensitive labels, we are actually the global leader when it comes to producing labels that comes with full adhesive, and this is actually where Avery Dennison we play in. There are also other decoration technology out there that you can actually see on the slide, such as shrink sleeve, wraparound, wet glue, Immo label, direct printing. These are other decoration technologies available and commonly used in the market. But Avery Dennison, our expertise is in pressure sensitive label, or in short PSL. And so actually we would like to focus more on PSL. And if you go to the next slide, it is Next one. Yes. So why is it important to talk about PSL is because when we look at the ASEAN labeling context, it is still one of the main decoration technology used by a lot of brands today. It is still constituting to close to 50% of the decoration technology used. And a lot of our PSL are actually labeled onto rigid plastics. So if you look at the graph on the right, so PSL, our main play is actually in rigid plastic as well as in glass. And rigid plastic, again, you can see two of the main plastic types used in the market is PET and HDPE. So these are actually two of the main focus whenever we develop new labeling innovations. We actually focus a lot on PET and HDPE bottles. Yeah, so why is it important that we talk about PSL when we talk about design for recyclability or eco-design is because even though labels itself takes up a small percentage of the overall packaging weight, but we have to recognize that the choice of labels will actually impact on whether or not the overall packaging will be recyclable. And we actually work or we talk to a lot of recyclers in this region. Labels are typically seen as a contaminant to the recycling process. And that's why we would like to correct this view and to also share with the audience today about what kind of solutions when we talk about labels will actually enable the packaging to be recyclable, focusing a lot on PET and HDPE. So how do we select the right labels? Okay, go to that. Yeah, so if we look at design for recycling guidelines from other regions, of course, these are some of the different packaging types. So labels have to be selected carefully according to the primary packaging type that we are looking at. So, and let me put it simply, we are looking at probably when we talk about labels, we look at two different innovations. The best is always to have the label separated from the packaging. So we are looking at wash-off label. That is always the best solution. So the labels will never go with the plastic itself. But there are limitations to decoration technology. So if labels are not able to be separated from the recycling stream, then we look at mono material. That is the second best option. So in fact, today I'm really proud to share that AVN we have developed solutions that are able to separate cleanly for both PET as well as HDPE. And so if you can go to the next slide. So these are the two solutions that we are focusing on. So for PET, there is already a very well-established process on recycling of PET, and we have actually developed labels that can easily wash off from PET bottles already. So in fact, this slide just going to show a very brief process on the recycling process of PET bottles. So I think you need to click, you can just click through. So so in PET recycling, which is already very well established, typically the bottles will be ground into small flakes, and in the recycling process, the flakes will be washed in a caustic tank. So this is a very well established process for PET recycling. And what we do is we actually develop label solutions that can wash off in the recycling process in the caustic bath of typically 70 to 85 degrees Celsius and a small percentage of caustic solution. So there are already innovations that labels can easily wash off from PET bottles, and relying on the sink float separation of labels being less dense than water and PET being denser, you can get a very clean stream of PET recyclates that can be food grade certified. So if you, I don't know if you can play this video. I think it's okay. So we will skip the video, it's okay. It's actually showing a lab washing that we actually did in the laboratory, showing the sink float separation. But I think in this case, we will just skip the video. So, I mean, if the audience would like to understand a bit more about how we prove that labels can wash off from PET bottles and how you get clean PET flakes, you can always approach us and then we can share it separately. So the second most commonly used plastic type in the market today is HDPE. And so this is actually a very new study that we have done with a third-party test lab in the Europe. So in the past, nobody knows what happens to the labels during the recycling of HDPE. And therefore, the available technology when we talk about labels is always looking into monomaterial solutions. But monomaterial, the challenge is that for natural and white HDPE, if you recycle the label with the HDPE bottle, you get actually contamination from the inks, which will then contaminate the final color of the recycling. So therefore, what we do is that we actually partner with NTCP, a third-party lab in the Europe, to prove that in fact, in the actual recycling process of HDPE, the labels do wash off. So standard filmic emulsion labels that is commonly used by brand owners today in the market for HDPE can in fact wash off from HDPE bottles. And we have actually just obtained the approval from Reciclass that our labels, filmic labels, is actually fully compatible for HDPE recycling. So this is actually just an overview of the actual tests that we did. But of course, just to bring your attention to the bottom right picture, you can see that the final recycled HDPE flakes is actually clean and completely separated out from labels itself. Yeah, so again, this is also showing you the final result that if you actually look at the end of the recycling process for HDPE, we are able to achieve 100% clean recycled HDPE flakes from this test. So yeah, so these are just, so the presentation today, the only two takeaways I probably would like to share would be on the solutions available for both PET and HDPE bottles, which are commonly used in the market. And in fact, there are already washable labels that can separate out from the bottles and give you clean plastic recycling at the end. So yeah. Yeah, so this is all from my side.
Okay, I think thank Kun Claudia and Kun Keching for the very insightful presentation and sharing. I think I really like the word you just said that we cannot solve it alone, because you can clearly see that your vision begins with together, right? That's really good. That means the collaboration along the value chain is really important. And I think this is a good idea that we can see the practice of the PPWR as well as the practices from the US, as well as the practice from Asia Pacific about this labeling. It's a small part of the packaging, but very important role during the recycling process, right? So right now, I think you guys must have some questions you can ask from both online and from the room. You can ask in Thai, or otherwise you can type it in the chat box. Okay, เชิญครับ มีไหมครับ
So let me question to you, Claudia. So there is a question from the chat box asking, do you know what is the packaging type of identified to the class A, B, C, D, or we have to wait to the guideline to be announced in 2028?
So basically, the various classes of packaging are not linked to the type of packaging, meaning whether it's PET, HDP, each type of packaging can be in each of the classes. The classification depends on recyclability parameters. So the more the packaging is recyclable, the higher it will be in the classification. So the most recyclable packaging will be A, and the least recyclable will be D. And so if you think about recyclability parameters, for example, one of the things that can be focused on when developing the packaging is the material choice. For example, monomaterials, not complicating the packaging with various type of materials. But also the design, having a simple design and construction of the packaging can help in having a higher recyclability rate.
Also, the other question is the guideline published now.
Yes, the guidelines, are we talking specifically about design for recycling guidelines?
Yes, I think so.
So they are being defined, as I said. So basically, the European Commission sets the overall ambition in this area, and this will be done by 2028. So they should be published by 1st of January of 2028. And then on a national level, each country will set their EPR fees based on the overall ambitions. But also there, the principles, meaning the eco-modulation of the fees, is the same. Yeah, I mentioned during the presentation that design for recycling guidelines are set by associations. I mentioned Recyclas for Europe. It's very influential association, and we work very closely with them. As also Kejin mentioned, it's news from this week. We got approval from Recyclas for our solutions as enabling the recyclability of HDPE packaging, and the idea is actually that it's these bodies like Recyclas who develop the design for recycling guidelines, and then the European standardization organization called CEN will ratify at European overarching level these guidelines.
มีคำถามเพิ่มเติมไหมคะ
เชิญนะครับคนนี้เอ็กซ์เพิร์ตมาเองละ
เขาคุณคราวเดียค่ะเขาจะเป็นคณะกรรมการอยู่ในกลุ่มRecyclas แล้วก็ PPWR ด้วยถ้าสมมติว่าอยากถามข้อมูลอะไรเกี่ยวกับไกด์ไลน์ที่มันอาจจะเข้ามาถึงอาเซียนในเมืองไทยอะไรอย่างเงี้ยค่ะก็หรือว่าถ้าเกิดว่าเป็นผู้ประกอบการที่จะส่งออกไปฝั่งยุโรปหรือว่าฝั่งอเมริกาอะไรอย่างเงี้ยค่ะก็ถามได้นะคะ
Also, maybe something I want to add that I didn't mention previously. We have talked about design for recycling guidelines and how it works between the industry body who develops them and the European standardization organization who ratifies them, but it's also important to mention that these design for recycling guidelines are not something that is developed and published once and it remains the same forever. So they are very much living documents which are of course continuously updated based on new legislation requirements, but for example also on new recycling process, because recycling processes evolve, recycling infrastructure matures, and of course all of these elements influence the design for recycling guidelines, as also new laboratory findings do.
Maybe I can ask a question that I'm not sure that you have a business in Thailand also, right? What would you recommend for developing this eco-modulation linked to the EPR for Thailand context.
So you mean what we would recommend as standard to develop, or
the
way
process, or what the working way, or something, or the challenges in your view?
Yeah. Well, one of the things I often mention to my colleagues, and we always say it, one of the powerful things of this type of legislations is that they offer an opportunity for companies that want really to be at the forefront of sustainability and circularity in this case to really lead the way, to have competitive advantage. And one idea could be really to take the lead in the development of this type of guidelines in Thailand, with having the association we are hosted by today taking the lead in the development of these standards in collaboration of all the member companies we have here today. I always see this as opportunities. Of course, in Europe, the European Commission took the lead, but also even there, we work with associations to continuously raise the bar, or even develop ourselves or co-develop the guidelines. So I would suggest something similar in Thailand.
Thank you. ก็เขาจริงๆก็พูดชัดเจนเลยนะว่าจริงๆมองเรื่องนี้เป็นโอกาสนะเป็นโอกาสแล้วก็สร้างไอ้ competitive advantage นะฮะก็ผมว่าและสุดท้ายคือเขาก็เลยคอมเมนต์ว่าไอ้สุดท้ายมันต้องทำงานร่วมกันทุกๆฝ่ายใช่ไหมฮะทำงานเรื่อง collaboration ทั้งผู้ประกอบการเองแล้วก็ภาคส่วนที่เกี่ยวข้องภาครัฐนะฮะจริงๆเขาก็ย้ำแค่นี้เองคิดว่าก็น่าจะเป็นสิ่งที่ตรงกันนะฮะกับที่เราตั้งใจคิดไว้เหมือนกันครับ
Hi, my name is Prapimpan from GISA. So I also have a question about the SME in Thailand, because we also know that the impact of the international regulation have like a very huge to the industry in Thailand. But I believe that for the big company, they have like a program, or they be really ready for the change process. But for the SME in Thailand, they are very like a little factor. So do you have any like a recommendation, or from your experiences to work with SME in Europe, you have like an incentive to support them to change for the eco-modulated fee or for the eco-label eco-products?
Yeah, I understand your point. Indeed, for SMEs, also in terms of resourcing, the way you operate is different than global players. I would come back probably to the previous recommendation, or way we operate I did, which is collaboration. I think that for SMEs, a good way to still manage through the complexity of the regulation and the multiple changes is really to be active in associations that provide expertise, provide really the knowledge you need, because of course, the more you get input, let's say, from this type of bodies, the easier it is to then internally, even with limited resources, manage to comply and to be ahead of the curve in circularity. So really leveraging your external partnership ecosystem, and even potential partnership with global players, because as we do, we want to collaborate, as I said, with of course industry associations, but also other companies, and we can help each other. And where, for example, we have the expertise, we can help smaller companies get insights you might otherwise not have. So I would say your way to go is really external